This is Paul Turner, the Immigration Barrister at Imperium Chambers. Today, the question has to be asked is what can be done about the immigration system in the United Kingdom following the tragic deaths of people in the English Channel. Something that must have been foreseen as likely to happen, and something that is possibly going to happen again, though I pray it doesn't in the future. Well, the short answer to this is that we have a system at present where the government asylum system is, by the Secretary of State's own words, broken. There are people waiting up to 3 years for a decision instead of 6 months. That are on top of that, there are 1 million undocumented migrants or so living in the United Kingdom, subject to the hostile environment, without the right to work or rent or have their licences revoked. Some of them with families, and some of them that have been here with long terms of residence and also settled and integrated into the United Kingdom's economy. On top of that, there's no plans to actually deal with the undocumented migrants, as if the government wants to forget that they're there. So what do we do? Well, in my view, the starting point has got to be, before we look at what are comparatively small numbers of people crossing the Channel compared with what happened, say, 20 years ago, is we need to deal with the people that are in the United Kingdom. And the only realistic way of dealing with that is to deal with it by way of an amnesty for targeted migrants. There are a huge number of positive benefits to this. First of all, it would be a humane act. It would bring the 1 million or so people within the hostile environment into normal society, where they could contribute, where they could pay tax, and where they could have a stable and sensible life. It would also increase their availability to get vaccinated, because some people are scared of being vaccinated. And it would certainly clear up some of the grey economy that exists due to these people not being able to work lawfully. So there are humane and practical reasons. Indeed, Boris Johnson has spoken often about it, and indeed in the parliamentary debate there was talk of a targeted amnesty. So the first thing that needs to happen is there needs to be some sort of amnesty to clear this up. And there seems to be some political will behind it, or movement behind it, but it needs to be pushed. What then? Well, then we have the asylum system, or the future asylum system. Now, it's all well and good the Secretary of State talking about the asylum system being broken and the new nationality bill going through. But in reality, it doesn't really matter whether you seek to try and deal with people by saying their cases are inadmissible because they come by boat. They used to come by lorry, because the courts are likely to say that their cases need to be determined in the United Kingdom. Obviously, since we left the EU, we can no longer return people that come from France to France, because we're no longer part of the Dublin Convention, something the government overlooked when they negotiated the withdrawal agreement. So there needs to be a radical overhaul of the asylum system as it stands at the moment. Not about what the people are arriving on the beaches, but about the huge number of people whose cases are simply put in a backlog. I've had people waiting years for an asylum interview, and this is only likely to get worse. So this clearly feeds into also the fact that there's also the Windrush scandal, and it turns out that out of potentially, I think it was 15,000 people who could qualify for compensation, only about 836 people or so over the last 2.5 years have actually received any compensation. And the government is seeking to recruit more people. And therein lies the answer. First of all, one needs to step back from the right-wing politics. Secondly, one needs to employ a team to work out how to deal with immigration and migration generally. Thirdly, the immigration rules, which have grown over the last 20 or so years that I've been practicing, need to be looked at again and started afresh. It could be said that the Immigration Act 1971, which provides the basis of the current immigration system, needs to be revisited, rather than just adding numerous bills every 2 or 3 years, which don't really do anything and certainly don't really help people, nor does taking away the right of appeal from people as an attempt to deny them justice. It seems, therefore, that there needs to be a two-stage process. Ideally, one would want to deal with the people that are already in the United Kingdom. And the only way that it can realistically be done without spending a huge sum of money and the government facing innumerable legal challenges is to have an amnesty. The second thing is to step back and look at what sort of immigration system we want and to put into place sufficient resources to deal with asylum cases rather than just talking big on television without actually doing anything. The consequences of that we've tragically seen over the last few days with people drowning in the Channel. If the government are so convinced that they want to crack down on, as it were, illegal smugglers and people traffickers who profit out of people fleeing from countries that have often been devastated by the Western powers, then they need to do more to enable people to claim asylum from abroad. At present, there are, I think, 1 or 2 settlement schemes, and I don't think they've settled more than 25,000 people over the last 5 or 6 years. So plainly, that doesn't happen. There isn't an application form. You can't walk into an embassy or apply for asylum online as you can for any other application. You essentially need to be in the United Kingdom to apply for asylum, unless you fall under one of the very limited settlement schemes. So if the government wants to avoid people travelling across the Channel by boat or entering the country illegally, then it seems to me that they need to radically overhaul how they're going to deal with this. Simply suggesting that they're going to turn back boats, use jet skis to disrupt boats, which given what's happened recently would be catastrophic in my view, or alternatively sending them off to places as far away as the Falkland Islands, where it's going to cost somewhere in the region of £100,000 or so to deal with each asylum case. There needs to be something more practical. It seems to me that the government needs to actually spend more money and give more resources to the Home Office so that they can firstly deal with the huge backlog of undocumented migrants who continue to exist in the United Kingdom, and secondly put into place a system that actually works so that if somebody claims asylum, then their asylum claim is processed quickly. I think recent statistics show that Priti Patel is not particularly telling the truth or adhering to it in saying that 70% of the people that cross the Channel are no more than economic migrants, given that between I think 2017 and 2019 the majority of the people that claimed asylum were actually granted refugee status or some form of status, which indicates that the majority of the people making the dangerous and potentially deadly crossing are actually entitled under international law to refugee status in the United Kingdom. So we're not awash with economic migrants. According to the statistics, it appears that we have a relatively small number of genuine refugees who are fleeing a war-torn country, or if they are economic migrants, they're seeking a better way of life. Weeding them out is not going to happen by sending them off to the Falkland Islands. Weeding them out will only happen if the Home Office employs enough staff and trains them, and that the system works and is funded efficiently. At present, we have a broken asylum system, and we have a blatant disregard to the million or so undocumented migrants. The hostile environment that was put into place to encourage people to go home has plainly failed. The number of voluntary departures, which it was due to encourage, of people going back to their home country, has fallen and has continued to fall. So people aren't going home. So the hostile environment is essentially just a cruel way of making people's lives and their children's lives miserable, especially when they've been here for a long period of time. In fact, the 2012 shake-up, which moved the period of long residence from 14 to 20 years, means that if you were to arrive in the United Kingdom, you might have to wait 30 years before you qualify for indefinite leave to remain. That's the sad reality of the immigration system as it is at the moment. It seems to me that it's being politically driven, that there is no humanity in it, and I think I recall Priti Patel saying that she was looking for a humane system. There simply isn't one in place, or one that nobody can see. And this is brought to the fore, in particular, by the recent tragedy of the people drowning in the Channel. And as I say, as winter draws on, and as it becomes more uncomfortable in the camps in France, and given the limited resources that the French have, more people are going to be making the crossing, and the probability is that more people will sadly die. But this is something that the government, whilst they say that they're terribly sorry about it, and I have no doubt that they are, whilst they're sorry about it, they're in a position to do something about it, and at the moment they are not. So in short, it seems to me that the only way forward is, firstly, you need to clear the decks. So the only way you can do that, unless you're going to spend an absolute fortune, far more than spent on the coronavirus, in removing the undocumented migrants or identifying them, you're going to need to have some sort of targeted amnesty, whether you like it or not. And secondly, you're going to need to recruit a lot more people to the Home Office, and ideally revisit the immigration rules to make it either possible for people to claim asylum from abroad, or alternatively so that anyone that arrives in the United Kingdom has their asylum claim processed quickly, so that the genuine refugees can get their status and get on with their lives, and the people that are not genuine can be removed. Obviously, if you've cleared the backlog and you have a system that works, removal will not be such a problem. However, this is something that the government seems to be willfully ignoring. So, in short, it seems really that there is only two options. One, carry on as we are, with the Secretary of State issuing more right-wing rhetoric. At the moment, she seems to have gone on the missing list following this tragedy that's been predicted. And secondly, basically starting again, clearing the decks, amnesty for the people that have been here for a long period of time, and secondly, putting in a rigorous system and giving it the teeth and the resources to bite, so that fresh claims are dealt with quickly and promptly. Anything else is just going to be a continued muddle. And I understand from reading various articles that Number 10 are concerned about the issue of immigration, and it takes up a lot of their time. Well, if it takes up a lot of their time, why not spend some money on it? Why not resolve the problem? They did it in 2006-07 with the previous legacy scheme and cleared some 500,000 cases. It involved a lot of effort, but it brought results. So there's no reason why they can't do it again. Obviously, one of the reasons is probably political, which is that it wouldn't play well to the right-wingers and the people that think that migrants are just coming here to take our jobs, which doesn't seem to be borne out by any statistical evidence. And if anything, the evidence has established that migrants tend to contribute more to the UK economy than the average British citizen. But that's more of a political topic. I'm concerned with the humane aspect of this case and how it should be dealt with. I cannot see any other alternative, and I do not see any other alternative being put on the table by the government. So, in respect of pushing forward with an amnesty, I believe there is some outstanding petition that aims at a targeted amnesty. That should be supported. MPs, etc., should be supported. The word amnesty should be kept in the forefront of people's mind, and not be overshadowed by the comparatively small number of people that are arriving by small boats, and I pray that they arrive safely, or that the French return them safely. I pray really for their safety more than anything else, and feel for them in the fact that often they are coming from countries that have been devastated by war, some of which has been caused by the West and some of it not caused by the West. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this video. I've taken some time to think about it. I think this is probably the only way forward really that is going to practically work. Whether the government will act is another matter. Please take care, please stay safe. We are in the middle of the pandemic, and you need to look after yourselves and your family, so get vaccinated. You are entitled, even if you're undocumented, to be vaccinated without fear of any enforcement action, so do that as well. And please subscribe to my channel. And if you do have an immigration problem, I'm always here to help. Thank you again for watching. This is Paul Turner, the Immigration Barrister at Imperium Chambers.